Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमः ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिन्नते नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा. Okay, so last week we sang Jagannath Ashtakam, and this week we will sing a beautiful bhajan going back to Shri Narottam Das Thakur's Prarthana that we were singing before, Radha Krishna Pranamora. So it's a compilation of lot of bhajans, devotional songs that Shri Narottam Das Thakur, one of the Parshads of Lord Gauranga, he compiled. So this is the first prayer of this compilation, Prarthana, which is literally means prayers. And this is the first one, saying Lal Samai Prarthana. So eagerness towards worshipping the Lord. And this is called Gauranga Balite Habe Pulaka Sharira. So we will sing this prayer this week because Lord Gauranga, who is none other than Krishna, in the mood of Srimati Radharani, symbolizes the pulling of the Rath of Lord Jagannath. So we celebrated Jagannath Rath Yatra, and Gauranga Mahaprabhu, as the top devotee of the Lord, he pulls in the mood of Srimati Radharani the Rath, the cart of Lord Jagannath, into Vrindavan, back into Vrindavan, into our hearts. So since we glorified Lord Jagannath last week, we will glorify Lord Gauranga this week. Okay, so we'll continue with this beautiful prayer. Gauranga bolite habe pulak sharira Hari Hari bolite na yane babinira Gauranga bolite habe pulak sharira Hari Hari bolite na yane babinira Arak benitai chandar karuna hoibe samsara basana mora kab tuchh habe Vishaya chariya kabe shuddha bimana kabe ham hairabo Shri Vrindavana Rupa Raghunatha Pade Hoibe Akuti Kabe Hama Bhujabo Sejugala Priti Rupa Raghunatha Pade Rahu Mora Asha Pratana karo ye sada Narottama dasa Rupa Raghunatha pade Rahu mora asha Pratana karo ye sada Narottama dasa Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Prarthana ki jai, Shri Narottam Das Thakur ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Anybody would like to read the translation for this prayer?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Can I
Yes,
read that?
yes, please, Prabhuji. Yeah, go ahead.
Translation. Hare Krishna. When will that opportune moment come to us? When there will be shivering of the body as soon as we chant Lord Gauranga's name. While chanting Hare Krishna, when will there be tears in the eyes? When will I obtain the mercy of Lord Nityanand Chandra? When by his mercy will the desire for the material enjoyment become very insignificant? When the mind is completely purified, being freed from material anxieties and desires, then I shall be able to understand Vrindavan and the conjugal love of Radha and Krishna. And then my spiritual life will be successful. 4. When shall I be very much eager to study the books left by the six Goswamis, headed by Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Raghunatha Das Goswami? By their instruction, I shall be able to properly understand the loving affairs of Radha and Krishna. My only aspiration is to attain the lotus feet of the six Goswamis, headed by Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Raghunatha Das Goswami. Narottama Das constantly prays to attain their lotus feet. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. Yes. So very simple, yet very, very heart-touching prayer. This is all the prayers by Narottam Das Thakur are really, really mesmerizing. And yes, like here, he is saying that when will I have the eagerness to study the books? So while we are reading Prabhupada Lilamrit, thank you all for your association, at least with our humble effort and some sincere, we're making a sincere attempt to study the books given by our acharyas, given by Srila Prabhupada, because whatever Srila Prabhupada gave was all based on the literature given by our Goswamis. So by reading Srila Prabhupada's books, we are actually reading all our predecessor acharyas' books, because Prabhupada's purports and commentaries are all based on the deep realizations of our Goswamis. So, okay, so let's continue with Srila Prabhupada Lilamrit. So yesterday we saw Prabhupada is now, actually yesterday was weekend Sunday after the Jagannath Rath Yatra. Literally Prabhupada also went for his Sunday outing too. He came close to our hearts after traveling all around the world in Europe, and he came back to New Vrindavan, which is, like we were saying, is closest to our Cincinnati in terms of Dham, because New Vrindavan Dham is not different from Sri Vrindavan Dham. And Prabhupada spent the whole of the weekend. He was celebrating Janmashtami after we celebrated Rath Yatra. Prabhupada celebrating Janmashtami and Prabhupada Appearance Day, which comes on the day of Nandotsav, after the day of Janmashtami. And we saw Prabhupada so nicely and lovingly teaching his disciples on a lot of things. He was some of the principles that we read yesterday, that Prabhupada was telling Satsvarup Das Goswami Maharaj, who is the author of this Srila Prabhupada Lilamrit, and after he has taken sannyas, how he had eagerness, like because he was seeing everybody else was going and meeting Prabhupada. There was 300 plus disciples assembled in New Vrindavan for this festivities of Srila Prabhupada being there for Janmashtami. And since everybody was going and meeting Prabhupada, even though he didn't have any questions per se, because Prabhupada had answered all his questions in letters, still he had that anxiety, eagerness to go and meet Prabhupada physically, right? So he goes and he says to Prabhupada, Prabhupada's receiving his massage at the time. He says, sorry, Prabhupada, I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to come and see you because everybody else was coming. So I had that impulse. And Prabhupada looks at him sternly and says, everything is there in my books, right? You don't need to have this anxiety. So again, Prabhupada is giving us a very nice principle there, that physical association, even though externally through our material eyes it may seem very significant, which many of the practicing devotees have the tendency to go and be physically near to their Guru Maharaj just for the sake of being so, right? But that is not very important. If we sincerely follow the instructions given by our Guru Maharaj, then just even the Vani association is actually even more potent, even more powerful. So if we read the books given by Acharyas, we understand what their mood is, what their mission is, what they are trying to tell us, and essentially follow their instructions, then that is even more paramount. And we get the mercy of our Guru Maharaj, we get the mercy of our Acharyas by following in their instructions. So that was a very nice principle that he shared. And Prabhupada again shared like he was very equal to everybody, not just human beings. We saw he was cuddling the cats, right? And he was um, being very courteous to everybody around him. And he was not affected by anything, even though like this chapter again we were talking like he was absorbed. He was not attached. So even though he was dealing practically day-to-day affairs, Bombay Temple project was still struggling. He was writing letters to Giriraj Maharaj and guiding them. But at the same time, he was continuing with his preaching program, going on with his day-to-day programs. So because he was transcendental to all the mundane affairs of the material world. So he was not disturbed. So he was not disturbed because he was not attached. He was absorbed in the moods of Krishna. He was absorbed in the moods of in the bhav and in the meditation of the Lord and preaching activities. So we'll continue here. So he was also distributing again. He said this most important thing is to travel to town and hold festivals and distribute books and magazines. And one other thing he mentioned was that it is, well, when Satsuru Maharaj was saying that Prabhupada told him to travel like this and preach, then should the other previous instruction that he should go to temple to guide the other sadhakas in their morning programs was not important. Prabhupada says, no, everything is important. Krishna's head is important, Krishna's foot is important. So again, we should not compare in services. Each and every service that we do is equally important, whether it be washing the pot, whether it be sweeping the floor, whether it being giving Harikatha, whether it being dressing the deities, right? All the services are to the Lord are transcendental. We should not say, oh, one service is less important, one service is more important. So that is again the message that Prabhupada is teaching. Okay, September 9. The devotees in Dallas had purchased a large church facility and were forming the first ISKCON children's school, known as Gurukul. Prabhupada, while traveling in India during 1971 and 1972, had sent a series of letters to the Dallas teachers, explaining the basic direction he wanted them to take for beginning a Krishna conscious primary school. We will teach the basic requirements of reading and writing, but also give them real spiritual knowledge, how to live perfectly. What other school of learning offers such a wonderful educational opportunity? Last night, the topic of my lecture at our Delhi Pandal was the necessity for teaching Krishna consciousness in all our schools and colleges. This is a revolutionary thought, but we have seen that the practical outcome of so much godless education in technology and science is that they are producing only hippies, one after another. What is the use of their skyscraper buildings if their sons will not maintain them? The old system of Gurukul should be revived as the perfect example of a system designed to produce great men, sober and responsible leaders who know what is the real welfare of the citizens. Just as in the former days, all big personalities were trained in this way, now you have got the responsibility to inject this idea in your country. Please do it with a cool head, and very soon we shall see the practical benefit for your countrymen. These letters had assured the Dallas devotees that they were doing the most important work for the pleasure of Srila Prabhupada. The school had gained support from other ISKCON members, and many parents had sent their children. By the time of Srila Prabhupada's visit, about 50 students were enrolled. Prabhupada said Dallas's weather reminded him of Calcutta, even though he felt uncomfortably hot. Disdaining the use of air conditioning, he shed his kurta and sat on the lawn with his inexperienced but eager group of teachers. The best system of education, he said, was as he had known as a child. One teacher in a room with up to 50 students of various ages and aptitudes. One at a time, the students would come to the teacher's desk, receive guidance and a further assignment, and then return to work. The Gurukula teachers were particularly concerned and puzzled about how to discipline children without being punitive, and Prabhupada unhesitatingly solved all their puzzles. He said, the student should both fear and love their teachers. The teacher, by stern countenance, may threaten an unruly child and make him submit, but the teacher should not hit the child. The next day, Srila Prabhupada went into a classroom and sat on a cushion before the class. Holding a blackboard pointer in each hand, he joked that one stick could be used for hitting the students' heads and the other for hitting their hands. The children and teachers became delighted to see Prabhupada's playful mood. And when he asked if anyone wanted to get hit, both teachers and students moved forward, holding their hands out for a merciful slap from Srila Prabhupada. To demonstrate how to teach, Prabhupada called for a volunteer. Dwarkadish came forward. Prabhupada, placing his venerable hand over the boys, guided him repeatedly in forming the first letter of the Sanskrit alphabet. News of Bombay followed Prabhupada to Dallas. A devotee who had recently come to the West from Bombay informed Prabhupada of Giriraj's recent talk of resigning as president of the center. Depressed by his ineffectiveness in dealing with Mr. N, the lawyers, and the government, and harassed by bickering and uncooperative devotees, he was considering himself unworthy to keep the charge. Now Giriraj's anxiety became Prabhupada's, as again he concerned himself with all the affairs of his Juhu project. There seemed to be no one he could discuss this with, since the devotees in America knew almost nothing of matters in Bombay. The night was too hot for sleeping, and Prabhupada could not concentrate on translating Srimad Bhagavatam, so he stayed up late, talking with his secretary about Bombay. Surmising the mind and mood of Mr. N and expressing his concern for his Hare Krishna land and his wonder at the devotee's hesitation and disheartenment, he turned the argument this way and that, considering it in different lights, until in the early morning he finally put it aside. Afterward, he composed another telegram. Settle land immediately at best price possible. N promised to pay it. If he won't, we can pay suggest 15,000. Don't change presidency until I come. Large marble deities of Radha and Krishna arrived in Dallas by trailer from New York. Prabhupada had specifically selected these deities for Dallas, Gurukula, while in India and ordered them to be shipped to the United States. The Krishna deity was magnificent. He was tall, bigger than most ISKCON deities, and his limbs and head were strikingly large. According to one story, the deity was several hundred years old and therefore carved according to an ancient tradition. Even though the devotees in Dallas were unprepared to install Radhakrishna deities, Prabhupada told them to get ready in 2 days for the installation, which he would personally perform. Janava Devi Dasi, however, unauthorizedly removed the original paint from the deities and began to repaint them. When Prabhupada heard this, he became furious. He called the Dallas president, Satsvarupa Das Goswami, to his room and demanded an explanation. Satsvarupa said that he was a fool, but that Janava had also acted without his permission. Prabhupada then called for Janava and yelled at her furiously. She began to cry. Why have you done this? Srila Prabhupada demanded. Nonsense, was her choked reply. Nonsense, Srila Prabhupada affirmed. Suicidal nonsense. You are a nonsense and you will always remain a nonsense. So what are you going to do about this? Well, Srila Prabhupada, Janava replied weakly. I called up Bharadraj in Los Angeles and he said, if I use a certain kind of paint, Bharadraj, Prabhupada yelled, who is this Bharadraj? I am your spiritual master and I am sitting before you. Why do you not ask me? Disgusted, he then turned to the others in the room. So what is to be done about this? One of the ladies said that with a quick drying paint, they could repaint the deities just as before in time for the installation. Yes, Srila Prabhupada said, do it immediately. Janava stayed up all night, carefully repainting the deities as before. Early the next morning, which was to be the morning of the deity installation, Krishna looked very beautiful, although his body was tacky in spots from the fresh paint. During that morning's walk around White Rock Lake, while talking philosophically about various topics, Prabhupada turned casually to Satsvarup Maharaj and asked about the preparations for the installation. When Satsvarupa said he was uncertain whether Krishna's paint would be dry enough, Prabhupada suddenly stopped. If the deities weren't ready, he said, there was no use in his staying any longer in Dallas. Turning to his secretary, he told him to change their flight reservations as soon as possible. Satsvarupa begged forgiveness and said that maybe everything could still be done on schedule. Prabhupada's angry mood changed and he continued walking, talking about other matters. Later in his room, Prabhupada talked alone to Satsvarupa, continuing on the point of his morning lecture about materialistic life. In a casual way, as most people would talk about ordinary things, Prabhupada spoke of the foolishness of the conditioned souls. They think that just by having a big family and being absorbed in mundane activities, they do not have to concern themselves with death or with the next life. As Prabhupada spoke, he shook his head in disbelief, considering the incredulous position of the materialist. all of Prabhupada's